Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do an extension of week 60's video. I'm going to show you what I do after the camera goes off with all of that paint that is on our paint pad. So after I was done and got things out of my way, I went ahead and I just used that paint pad with our homemade stamps, and I just used it with some of our edge stamps, and this is our roller stamp. This is the texture from the paint pad itself, so I just pressed it on there a few times to color this paper. So these are really nice for background papers, and I used a bunch of our stamps that we had made and stamped them out this way so that I can cut them out for embellishments on different things that I may want, or for collage fodder. I did our alphabets. Our alphabets, when I started, they already had some kind of a dark color. I think that I had used brown last. And so I went ahead and stamped those out and then stamped them out again. Got most of the brown off by the time I used the red. So, and then these again are our roller stamps. And when I got tired of stamping with that, with the paint pad, then I just went ahead and I took our paint pad and I filled a basin with about maybe a half an inch of water, maybe 3/4 of an inch. And I just stuck it in there and just squished it and squeezed it until I got all of the paint out of here. You do wind up with a little residual water, or this colored water in your sponge. So, but when you know that you've really squeezed it really well and you've rinsed it and you've washed it and you've really got it squeezed into that water and you got most every bit of paint out of your pad, then I take it and I really wring it out really, really good. Then I do give it a rinse in my sink, because at that point, pretty much all of that is into here. Yes, we have dirty water, but it's not solid acrylic paint going down my sink. You should never rinse these in your sink. Even if you're not going to use this to paint with, you can dump this in some clumping kitty litter, let it clump up and throw it away. Or we live in the country, I do just throw it out in the yard. But you don't want to dump this down your sink, so because it could possibly clog up your sink. But once I get this squeezed out super well, then I just put it onto a piece of plastic, set it aside, and let it dry. So now once you let your water sit for a long time, what happens is the paint kind of settles a little bit to the bottom. Now I've been using this since yesterday, and so at one point, I forgot to really mix it very well, and so I have some papers that are actually a little darker because they get that sediment on the paper, and so they dry darker. But I already just started this video once and then realized that it was going up and down. I can't stand those videos, so I hadn't got that far, and so I decided to just leave the papers in here and start over so that you could see it, the wide screen or whatever. So, but once I get the painty water done, and then you're pulling out some of the water, a little bit of the paint, and some of the water may be evaporating if you let it sit overnight, that type of thing. So, your water will change in consistency and color just a touch. But what you're going to do is, after you got your water, you want to make sure that you mix it. Now, I just mixed this a little 10 minutes ago or something, so I had already mixed it, but you want to mix it so that you don't have a bunch of paint sediment sitting on the bottom if you've let it set for a while. And then you're just going to put your papers in. Now, you don't want to just put a pile of papers in all at one time. You want to put them in one at a time. Make sure that they are completely covered before you put in the next page, because otherwise what can happen is the pages will stick together when you put them in there. They'll form an air bubble, and wherever that air bubble is, the water won't dye it, and you'll wind up with a spot of white or undyed paper wherever that bubble was. So you do want to do it one at a time and just get them pressed down in there. You don't have to let them set for a really long time. And then, what did I do with that? Here it is. And then I also like to dye tissue paper. Now, this is just one sheet of tissue paper folded up the way that they come. But I just undid it and then folded it back into its regular folds or whatever. And then these I do not let sit at all. I make sure that I get them completely wet. And then I take the folded over edge and lift that folded over edge up so that the water can run out wherever it may be stuck in your papers there. And when you take your papers out, all of them, you're just going to run them along the edge of your basin, and that helps pull a lot of that water off. So again, I've got the open end of my tissue paper pointed down the folded edges here, so it came up and folded and went back down the other side. Then I just take this just like this and set it aside. Okay. Now, I am going to show you, I did some earlier today. So these have been sitting about 4 hours. Normally my papers are, the dictionary's papers dry the fastest. They also soak up the least amount of color. And then the regular copy paper takes a little longer, and then the tissue paper takes just a little bit longer. Total, these have been sitting for 4 hours and they're dry. Now, this is the one that I did when I had the camera the wrong way, so it's totally wet. That's the one we just did. So this is a tissue paper that I did 4 hours ago. It's a little dry for unfolding. The drier they get, you can't unfold them when they're real wet, they tear. They're too wet. But if you let them get completely dry, they like to stick together. So you want to kind of hit it at about the halfway point. But so here is just a piece of our copy paper. This is the paper towel I used to dry off my plastic. Then there's another piece of copy paper and the dictionary pages, and then a couple of the tissue papers that I already unfolded. So these papers are dry and can be put aside now, so that we can take those others out of our basin and have a place to set them. So we'll get these out of the way. And I'm going to show you how I unfold the tissue paper. But first we'll take these papers out and get them set aside. So you're just going to want to take them out one at a time. Take them out carefully. Now I know that there's 2 here. Oh, maybe not. Okay, oh yeah, there was only 1. So take it out again, run it over the edge of your paper or your basin, and then just set it out onto your plastic. You can set them on top of each other. If you do, wherever they cross, they will leave a very straight edge. So I really don't like to do that. If I were to set this on top of another sheet, wherever this line was, my color would be different and there would be a very straight line. So I normally set them out just flat. And you can set something on top of them if you want to. Like if you have paper doilies, you could put those in this paint water and go ahead and dye those. And again, and if you feel like you have too much, you can always flip it over and run it across the edge of your basin, because you don't want it to get back in the water if you can help it. Whatever side of your paper is up will be much darker than whatever side is down. And I'll show you our dried papers in a second so you can see how those are. But so you just do it like this. Now I was just thinking, because of that straight edge, I don't like that straight edge. But I wonder, maybe I should go ahead and take one and rip it and put a ripped edge on. So I think I'm going to try that. And it should leave a wavy edge. So I'm going to take it. take this last one, and I'm going to just rip this one. And I'm going to set this on top of one of the other book pages, and I'm going to guess that it will leave that kind of a mark. And what will happen is it will be lighter underneath this paper and darker on that side of the paper. And reason being is whatever's in the air dries darker than whatever is touching your plastic or touching another piece of paper. Okay, so I just lined those up, both halves, on 2 different pieces of dictionary paper. And I won't be able to show you that because that's not going to dry for a couple of hours. If I think about it, I'll try and show it whenever I do my next video. So when I am totally done with this water, I'm going to take it and dump it outside. So now these are the papers that were sitting on my table. And now this is where it was, I don't know if you can see that or not. It's lighter here than it is here, and it has a nice dark line around it. And you can iron these, set them under a heavy book, or leave them just like they are. A lot of times I leave them just like this. Of course, I stack them up and stick them in a place to set so they get a little flatter. But if I want to iron them, I could always do it later. Because I love the crinkle of paper after it's been dyed. It has such a nice sound to it and a nice feel to it. So, and this even, if you're going to use any kind of napkin, paper towel, or whatever, in any kind of your collages or whatever you want to do with them, I know that this is 2-ply, and so it has to be separated before you use it, or otherwise when you put your Mod Podge or whatever on it, it is going to, it will separate at that point in time, and then you'll have problems. So, but you know, we just have some nice, it's hard to know if you're getting the looks of this. This was the side that was down, and this was the side that was up. And I'm not sure, oh, and I did take one of my painted papers, and I dyed that also, because now instead of being white, and sometimes in the camera it's hard to see, so we'll put a piece of white paper there. So instead of being white with my color on it, now I've got this really nice kind of brownish red background that I really do like. And so I'm going to set these aside, and I'll show you how to undo the tissue paper. And I just take these and fold them back up and set them aside. Now, these I use for crafting. I don't really think that I would dye tissue paper this way and wrap a gift in it, because it still does have a little bit of that paint residue. But see here where it was folded, so it was touching things, and this would have been the top of the tissue paper. So we've got that nice change in color. And it just really has a great look to it. Plus, it's colored tissue paper. So now if you wanted colored tissue paper, you have some instead of using stark white. So here's the one that I did this morning. I dripped on it. So this has been sitting about 4 hours, and it's pretty much completely dry. I mean, it may be damp a little bit here. And I already started, because it was offset like this, it was really easy to get apart. Sometimes they're harder to get apart, and you do want to take your time, or they have crinks and stuff, like little crinkles. Sometimes you need to like flatten that out to pull it apart so that you don't just rip that area, and take your time to separate them. And then this is sometimes the hardest part. Sometimes, nope, it's coming apart easy here. Let me see what the other end is like. Sometimes it's hard to get them started when it's just one sheet thickness. But this one didn't do too bad. So there we go. That's how you undo your tissue paper. And now, because it's just a touch damp, and look at the spot that was on my table and how dark that square is compared to that one. So you get a lot of different interests. Look at the line. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's a nice dark line there on that fold. Now I'm going to take this and just leave it opened all up and set it aside to actually dry because it has a dampness to it. Excuse me, now I'm going to get a tickle. You want to make sure that you don't leave them damp and stack them all up, because then you could get that musty smell to them, or they might mold or something. So just some of the other papers I've already done. I do like to drip. I love the look of drips. And so I do some like that because I just think they look really cool. This is one where I hadn't mixed my water and my paint back together really well. And so this is very, very dark on top because it has a paint sediment on top of there that wasn't totally mixed into the water. And that looks good too. So here's one side. And see how light that side is compared to this side. This would have been the side that was on my plastic mat. And this was the side that was up. So the side that is up always has more color. And a lot of times it looks like the back side doesn't have any color. Let me just see if we can see a difference here. So, and see, it really does still actually have color. It just doesn't take a whole lot of it, especially on the back side. So I just did some dictionary pages. And again, tissue paper. And then here is one of the ones where I didn't have it really well mixed together. So this side has a whole lot of color to it because of that paint sediment. This was the upside, and the upside is always darker. And here's the bottom side. So that still has a lot of nice color, but not quite as dark as the top side. This is darker than some of them that I've done. Let's see. Here are some of my first ones. No, this was really had the paint sediment on it also. But the back side on that one is even still just a little bit lighter than this one. So you never know exactly what you're going to get. And you know, basically I always say you've got double-sided paper here. You've got this side and you've got this side. So if you want to do something that's double-sided, it's not like you have paint on one side and then the other side, if you're going to like fold it and you've got that really stark white versus folding it and you've got that lighter color, which it's not even showing as much here, but you've got that lighter color versus that stark white, and it's in the same color tone of your top piece. So you know, so it looks very nice folded instead of, let's say you colored this and, you know, left the back white. You know, you've got that really stark difference between the two. So in this one, my paper had something sitting on it at one point. So it kind of had these little divots. And so it gave me kind of a really cool little pattern here. I didn't know those were there until I took them out and it was drying. And then there is just one that went in and out very fast. So, and before the sediment was settling in my thing, so there is one there. No, this one I just took a plain piece of white paper. I'm sorry. Plain piece of white paper and just lined it up on top of one of the other sheets that I had dyed. And then I just pressed it down like this and then just let it dry that way. So that way I wound up getting kind of a really cool pattern on that paper. And I got 2 pages for the amount of color as one. And then here are just some more tissue papers. So that is what I do after the camera goes off, because I've been working on this now for a couple of days, just playing around with it. You know, because you need an area to lay them out. You know, it takes a while for them to dry. The way that I do the splatters, oops, show you. I just take my paper towel and then I just dip it into here and let it soak up some of the water, and then I just hold it above the paper a ways and give it a squeeze until I have as much on there as I want to. So if you have the height, you really get this extra splatter around here, and when you have quite a bit in your paper towel. And give it kind of like a quick squeeze. Let it really like just hit and splatter. And I'll finish it. And I do kind of try and go to the edge and go off the edge a bit, because, and you don't want a huge puddle though, because a huge puddle will just soak out. Like I put a lot right here and I really shouldn't have. Soak a little bit that up, try and get it to stop. And normally I set these out wherever I'm going to leave them, and I don't move them after I've done this. Because what happens is if you move them, this is going to run and you're not going to get your nice little splatter look there. And there we go. That's how I do the splatters. And then just leave it to dry. Don't soak anything off of it. Don't, you know, like I got too much there. You can see how wide that soak mark's getting. So you want to just like let it drip, but don't let it get too much all in one spot. And then this is acrylic paint and water, so it dries nicely on your paper and sticks, but I will be able to wash my table off, and it's not going to be like anything that's totally permanent that's going to ruin my table. But normally I just get it on my plastic and, you know, and just let it set there. And I do like to do it on top of some that I've already dyed instead of just white, because that looks nice. I'm going to take this and I'm going to set it aside, because I do like to use those for collage and for, well, I can't think of really what it's called. When you glue paper to stuff, when you just take paper and you glue it on there, all I can think of in my head is macrame, which is like playing with fibers. But yeah, anyways, I use those a lot to glue to the outside of boxes to decorate them, give them texture and that type of thing. And so if I have a pretty paper towel, I always open it up and keep it. So napkins and that type of thing too. So that is what I do after the camera goes off sometimes, and I just wanted to show you, because I know I've explained it a lot, but I don't think I've ever actually shown you what I do and how I do it. And like I said, now I may make some more papers with this. You can dye fabric with it, not fabric that you're going to use in any kind of clothing, or fabric that will be washed, or fabric that will be worn, but fabric that will be used in your art. You can put that in there and you'll get this same nice color if you've got some white fabric. Even if you have colored fabric, it will, this color here will definitely make it look dingy, make it look a little older. And so you can do that also, which actually when these dry, I think I might, we'll see what kind of time I have today. I might actually do a little bit of fabric to give me some vintage looking fabric. So, excuse me. So thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. If you enjoy my videos, please share them with your friends. And I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.